Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today as I address some topics and answer some questions that you've had for me over the past few weeks. Today, Kevin, conductor, asks, what are the do's and don'ts of vibrato in an orchestra? Are there pieces that should always be non-vibrato? How do flutists navigate vibrato with their oboist colleagues? Match or not to match? Also, in your opinion, do conductors have license to ask for differences in vibrato, or is that too invasive? Would love to hear your thoughts on these topics. Well, Kevin, first of all, thank you for this respectful question. I'm just coming from some experience of sitting in the chair, having studied at the Youth Orchestra of Greater Philadelphia at age 15, and then through Juilliard and through Tanglewood and the Atlanta Symphony, and then an 18-year hiatus before now being principal flute at the Brevard Music Center in North Carolina. So I'm just coming from my experience. I believe that when we're playing in any musical ensemble, we are in focused communication. We have to understand that we're all sensitive and emotional about our art form. So did you know that we rarely forget an emotional response? It's our emotions that help us remember, and that facts and information we tend to dial down and not remember so much. So with this in mind, Kevin, in order for a leader to get a difference in vibrato speed or any other nuance, then you have to navigate the waters of emotional connection and individual pride in order to get that result. First of all, vibrato is kind of modern, 100 years old. Many of us learn the placements of vibrato in the sound, front, middle, or back, and the speeds of the vibrato in musical styles. If you'd like to change a player's delivery, I'd ask a question first. Is this issue I want to change the solo flute, or is it a wind section issue? As a professor, I teach my flute players in the studio to not use individualized vibrato speeds in most phrases that are tutti. For instance, in Debussy, Afternoon of a Faun, you're going along at number 2, and then you hit these triplets. The second flutist is playing with you, so you kind of want to dial down the vibrato. In major solos, it's necessary to recognize the flute player has studied this excerpt their whole life, their whole flute life, and they've been waiting for this very moment. So it's best that the conductor can stand back and simply listen and smile. When band directors ask me about their flute section of multiple flute players and vibrato, I tell them, let everyone play without vibrato and a pretty sound, and then add it on the longer notes. Add vibrato on the longer notes to get that flow and the length of the airflow. When you have one on a part, as in an orchestra, you want the principal flutist to have a slightly shimmery sound and vibrato, and then the second flutist, you have to have a great second flutist who can subordinate that principal flutist's sound. Now they're going to subordinate it with a little less vibrato in the front of the sound. We want wind players who can merge with the idea of one homogeneous wind section sound. I've been the culprit of not playing with a homogeneous timbre, and I had to stop moving around and sit and think realistically about the job I had to do instead of the sound I could create. For instance, a very homogeneous sound might be the opening of Mendelssohn's Midsummer Night's Dream Overture. Now, when playing in unison with the oboe, the flutist should check the vibrato speed with the oboist in advance. If they're not likely to check in with one another, then the flute player should always just use a beautiful non-vibrato sound and stay out of the way. It's been long agreed that the timbre of the flute is difficult to match with the reed instruments, especially when it comes to intonation. And it's also agreed that vibrato affects intonation. So I'd back off the vibrato if I were the flutist who was trying to blend. The number one question I get is about the opening of Beethoven's Leonore Overture Number 3. When you're coming down the scale, you might want it to sound, again, in the back of the sound. Now, are you allowed to stop the orchestra and ask for subtleties like this one on vibrato speed and intensity? Yes, if you do it in a way that says to everyone to get with a certain sound and timbre that you're trying to create. Non-vibrato usage can be asked for from a wind player, and I'd refer to it as more like a keyboard or an organ, much like the sound that Leopold Stokowski wanted from the Philadelphia Orchestra. Or if you'd like to explore a more early music timbre, you could certainly ask for less vibrato in the front of the sound. But to single someone out in a wind section for not playing the kind of timbre you're looking for isn't necessary in front of a group because of that heightened sensitivity in a focused communication. Perhaps a private, unassuming conversation about the vibrato that a flute player uses could happen. It's more personal, and it's about the teamwork you're trying to create with your team players. I've heard it said it's much better to be a guide on the side than a stage on the stage. And lastly, know in your heart that wind players are playing their hearts out. They're trying to play well for you in whatever way they know how. Their choice of vibrato speeds is very individual. So the license that you have as a conductor is to create a good, strong, immediate emotional response from your players that will guide them to wonder what new sound they can create for you in the rest of your repertoire for this season. Kevin, I hope I've helped. And if you would like to put a topic out there for me to discuss, you can email me at akporter@umich.edu. Thanks for joining me.